In 216 BC, under the blazing sun of southern Italy, the fields near the river Aufidus stood silent, as if waiting for a storm of blood. On one side stood Rome, the most powerful military force in the Mediterranean, proud and disciplined, convinced no enemy could ever bring them down. On the other side stood Carthage, the wealthy North African trading empire, placing its fate in the hands of one man, Hannibal Barca. This was not just a battle. It was a clash between an emerging empire and a military genius, between the brute strength of numbers and the sharp edge of strategy. What happened here would become one of the most famous victories in military history. Hannibal had not been born to be just another commander. He had been born to become Rome's nightmare. At only 9 years old, his father, Hamilcar Barca, Carthage's great general from the First Punic War, led him to the altar of the gods. There, the boy placed his hand on the stone and swore, "I will forever be Rome's enemy." That oath burned inside Hannibal for the rest of his life, guiding every step he took. From his youth, Hannibal revealed extraordinary talent. Brave and daring, yes, but more importantly, he possessed a military mind unlike any other. He did not see armies as masses of men, but as pieces on a chessboard, where a single move could decide the fate of nations. In 218 BC, when the Second Punic War erupted, Hannibal achieved the impossible. He led an army across the Alps. Through snow, ice, and death, he brought thousands of soldiers, horses, and even war elephants into Italy, a feat that terrified the Romans. From then until 216 BC, Hannibal crushed Roman forces again and again, at Trebia, at Lake Trasimene. Fear of him spread across Italy. Roman mothers whispered to their children, "Sleep, or Hannibal will come." By the summer of 216, the Roman Senate decided the nightmare had to end. They assembled their largest army ever, nearly 80,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. Their goal, to crush Hannibal once and for all. Against them, Hannibal had only 50,000 men, fewer infantry, but stronger cavalry. On paper, he had little chance. Yet Hannibal was not relying on numbers. He was relying on genius. The battlefield would be a plain near the town of Cannae, along the Aufidus River. Rome believed it would be Hannibal's grave. Instead, it would become the place where he wrote a masterpiece of warfare. Before sunrise, both armies prepared. The tension was palpable. Rome's army, commanded by the two consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro, was a mountain of steel, 80,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry. Their confidence was absolute. To them, Hannibal was a reckless gambler whose luck had run out. Hannibal's army numbered only 50,000, 32,000 infantry, 10,000 cavalry, the rest a mix of Gauls, Iberians, and Numidians. Outnumbered, but not outmatched. For Hannibal understood something Rome did not: strength is not in numbers, but in how numbers are used. His formation was unique. In the center, he placed the Gauls and Iberians, less disciplined, but fierce, arranged in a forward bulge, a crescent that jutted toward the Romans. On the flanks, he positioned stronger infantry, slightly behind. Most crucial of all, his cavalry, Numidian and Iberian, stood ready on both wings. When Roman officers saw the bulging Carthaginian center, they laughed, "Fools. Their line bends like a broken bow. One strike, and it will snap." They did not realize the bow was aimed at them. August 2nd, 216 BC. The sun rose, hot and merciless. The Roman legions advanced in their usual way, pressing forward with the weight of their numbers. Their massive block of infantry surged into Hannibal's center, determined to smash it apart. 80,000 men pressed like a living wall, driving into the bulge of Gauls and Iberians. Step by step, Hannibal's center gave ground. The crescent bent backward. To the Romans, it looked like collapse. They roared in triumph, believing victory was within reach. But it was all part of Hannibal's plan. As the Romans pushed deeper, they entered the jaws of a trap. The stronger Carthaginian infantry on the flanks began to pivot inward, like arms reaching to embrace. Meanwhile, Hannibal's cavalry had already smashed the Roman horsemen, and now thundered around the rear. In that instant, the greatest army Rome had ever fielded was encircled on all sides. The jaws of Hannibal's trap slammed shut. What followed was horror. The Romans, so proud of their discipline, now found themselves trapped in a human cauldron. Packed so tightly they could barely lift their swords, men at the front were crushed by those behind. Air grew thin. Soldiers suffocated before ever striking a blow. Carthaginian spears and blades cut relentlessly. From behind, Numidian cavalry slashed into the chaos. Step by step, the circle tightened, crushing the Roman mass. Blood soaked the dry earth. Screams filled the sky. By the day's end, over 50,000 Romans lay dead, including consuls, senators, and noble knights. It was the greatest military disaster in Roman history. The Aufidus River ran red. The fields of Cannae became a graveyard. Corpses lay piled in mounds, stench carried by the wind. And above it all, Hannibal sat upon his horse, calm, silent. He had not just won a battle. He had created a masterpiece of war. Rome was in shock. Gates were shut. Citizens wept for fathers, sons, husbands who would never return. Panic whispered, "Hannibal will march on Rome." But Hannibal did not. Instead, he chose to wear Rome down over time. And here lies one of history's greatest debates. What if Hannibal had marched on Rome after Cannae? Perhaps the city would have fallen, the Republic destroyed. What if Rome had lost the Second Punic War entirely? Carthage, not Rome, might have ruled the Mediterranean. Western civilization, law, government, even language, might have been built on Carthage's foundations, not Rome's. Hannibal's triumph at Cannae was unmatched. Yet by not striking Rome immediately, he gave them time. Time they used to rebuild, to adapt, to eventually turn the tide. Years later, at Zama, Hannibal would fall to Scipio Africanus, and Carthage would fade from history. But Cannae remains eternal. It is taught in every military academy. It is the perfect example of strategy over strength, of genius over numbers. The Battle of Cannae was not just a victory. It was a monument to strategy, a reminder that brilliance can turn weakness into strength, few into many. More than 2,000 years later, commanders still study Hannibal's double envelopment. His legacy is this: in war, as in life, the mind can shape destiny more than sheer force. So I ask you, if Hannibal had marched on Rome, would our world today still be the Roman world, or would it have been a Carthaginian one? And finally, which battle would you like me to tell next?